They stripped her naked at a charity gala. 7 months pregnant, surrounded by Boston's elite, cameras deliberately turned off. Four wealthy women thought they'd get away with it because they always had. They were wrong. What happened next wasn't just revenge, it was the complete destruction of a dynasty that had controlled an entire city for generations. One hidden video, one billionaire father, one woman who refused to stay silent. This is the true story of how Claire Donovan turned the worst night of her life into a weapon that brought down an empire. If you love stories where the underdog wins and justice actually happens, hit that like button and subscribe because this one will restore your faith in karma. Let's begin. The cold marble pressed against Claire Donovan's cheek as crimson pooled beneath her. 7 months pregnant, and now this. Her trembling hands clutched her swollen belly as another wave of pain tore through her body. "Please," she whispered to the empty penthouse bathroom. "Please hold on. Baby." Her phone lay 3 feet away, screen shattered from when she dropped it. Tyler's last text still glowed through the cracks. "Mother says you need to stop embarrassing the family." That had been 6 hours ago, back when she still believed tonight would be different. Back when she thought attending the Ashford Foundation Gala might prove she belonged in their world. How stupidly naive. Claire's vision blurred as memories crashed over her. 6 months earlier, she'd been a small-town graphic designer from Vermont who'd somehow captured the heart of Tyler Ashford, Boston's most eligible bachelor. His mother Celeste had smiled through gritted teeth at their courthouse wedding. His father Grant had called her charmingly provincial at their first family dinner, but she'd been pregnant within 3 months, and everything changed. The whispers started immediately. Old money families didn't reproduce that quickly unless something was wrong. Celeste began introducing Claire as Tyler's very young wife, with emphasis that made her age sound like a character flaw. Grant stopped acknowledging her presence entirely. Then this morning, the bomb dropped. The Boston Herald Society page featured a photograph of Claire at last month's fundraiser, alongside a devastating headline: "Ashford designer wife embezzles $200,000 from children's charity." The article was pure fiction, claiming anonymous sources had traced missing foundation funds directly to Claire's personal accounts. By noon, her Instagram had been flooded with death threats. By 3 p.m., her clients had all canceled their contracts. Tyler had promised he'd fix it, said his mother would issue a statement. All Claire had to do was attend tonight's gala and show her face, prove she had nothing to hide. She should have known better. Another contraction gripped her, different from before, sharper. Claire's hand shot to her abdomen, feeling the unnatural tightness. This wasn't normal pregnancy pain. This was her body shutting down. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, though she didn't know if she was apologizing to her unborn daughter or to herself. "I should have run when I had the chance." Her father Warren had warned her 5 years ago. When she'd told him about Tyler, he'd said exactly 3 words: "You'll regret this." They hadn't spoken since. Warren Donovan had built a tech empire from nothing, climbing from a Detroit assembly line to Silicon Valley boardrooms through pure brilliance and ruthless determination. He'd wanted more for his only daughter than marriage to old money parasites who'd never worked a real day in their lives. Claire had called him controlling, accused him of thinking his money made him right about everything. Now, bleeding on her bathroom floor, she understood he'd simply recognized predators when he saw them. Her vision darkened at the edges. The phone seemed impossibly far away. She stretched, fingertips brushing the cracked screen, and managed to drag it closer. The pain was constant now. No breaks between contractions. Something was seriously wrong. Claire's thumb hovered over the emergency call button, then slid to a different contact, one she'd sworn she'd never use again. The line rang once. "Claire," Warren's voice cracked with 5 years of unspoken longing and immediate alarm. "What's wrong, Wes?" "Daddy," she whispered, reverting to childhood in her terror. "I need help. Something's wrong with the baby, and I don't know what they did to me, but I can't stop bleeding, and—" "Where are you?" "Tyler's penthouse, Beacon Hill." "But Dad, they locked me out earlier, and I only got back in because the doorman felt sorry for me, and I'm 12 minutes away. Stay on the line with me, sweetheart. Can you get to the door?" "I don't think I can stand." "Then don't move. I'm coming." And Claire, his voice turned to granite. "Whatever they did to you tonight, they're going to wish they'd never been born." Through her fading consciousness, Claire wondered what he meant by whatever they did. How did he know something had happened unless he'd been watching all along? The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was the sound of helicopter rotors, impossibly close, and Warren's voice commanding someone to get the medical team ready. Now. Then nothing but black. The Harbor Point Club glittered like a jewel box, every surface reflecting champagne and diamonds. Boston's elite moved through the grand ballroom in designer gowns and bespoke suits, their laughter tinkling like breaking glass. Claire stood near the entrance, one hand protectively covering her pregnant belly, the other clutching a small evening bag that contained nothing but her phone and lipstick. Her emerald dress, which had seemed perfect that morning, now felt too bright, too attention-seeking. Everyone was staring. "There she is," someone whispered loudly enough to be heard. "The charity thief." "I heard she's not even really pregnant," another voice responded. "Just wearing padding to trap him." Claire's cheeks burned. She scanned the crowd for Tyler, finding him near the bar with his mother Celeste. He saw her, his expression flickering with something that might have been guilt, before Celeste placed a jeweled hand on his arm and whispered in his ear. Tyler looked away. 45 minutes. Claire told herself, stay for 45 minutes. Smile for the photographers. Then leave. She could survive 45 minutes. "Claire, darling." The voice came from directly behind her, dripping with false sweetness. She turned to find Sloane Mercer, Tyler's executive assistant, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Claire's monthly rent used to be. Sloane's blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup flawless, her smile venomous. "Sloane, such a brave choice showing your face tonight." Sloane's eyes traveled deliberately to Claire's belly. "After everything that's been printed about you, it's all lies." "Of course it is." Sloane's tone suggested she believed the opposite. "Though I do wonder why the Herald would print such specific financial details if there wasn't some truth to it. Because someone gave them those details." Claire thought but didn't say. Someone with access to foundation accounts who knew exactly how to make fabricated transactions look real. Someone like the woman standing in front of her. "If you'll excuse me." Claire started to move past, but Sloane caught her arm. "Actually, Celeste asked me to find you. She's arranged for you to freshen up before the photographs. There's a private dressing room backstage." Sloane's smile widened. "She wants to make sure you look your absolute best for the cameras." Every instinct screamed at Claire to refuse. But across the ballroom, Tyler was watching now. If she made a scene, refused his mother's olive branch, she'd be painted as the difficult one, the unstable one. "That's very thoughtful," Claire heard herself say. Sloane led her through the crowd toward a side corridor. They passed waiters carrying trays of champagne, photographers adjusting their equipment, Boston's wealthiest citizens who wouldn't meet Claire's eyes. The corridor narrowed, sounds from the ballroom fading. Claire's heels clicked against marble, each step taking her further from safety. Just through here, Sloane opened an unmarked door. The room beyond was small, lined with mirrors and clothing racks. Standing near the back were four women Claire recognized from family dinners: Celeste Ashford and her three sisters-in-law, Patricia, Margaret, and Victoria, all wearing expressions of cold satisfaction. "Thank you, Sloane," Celeste said without looking at the younger woman. "That will be all." Sloane hesitated, something like uncertainty crossing her face. Then she stepped back into the corridor, closing the door with a soft click. The lock engaged. Claire's heart began to hammer. "What's going on?" "We need to have a conversation," Celeste said, her cultured voice sharp as a blade. "About your future in this family." "My future, or lack thereof." Patricia moved to block the door. Margaret and Victoria flanked Claire on either side, creating a diamond formation that left her trapped in the center. Celeste stepped forward, diamonds glittering at her throat. At 55, she was still beautiful in the way that unlimited wealth and surgical intervention could achieve, but her eyes were dead things, calculating and merciless. This morning's article was just the beginning. Dear, a warning shot, if you will, but you didn't take the hint. Celeste's manicured hand reached out, adjusting a strand of Claire's hair with mock gentleness. "You actually showed up tonight, tried to brazen it out." "I have nothing to hide." "No." Celeste's smile was terrifying. "Then you won't mind proving it." "Proving what?" "That you're clean, That you haven't been spending our family's money on something other than baby supplies? Celeste's eyes traveled meaningfully down Claire's body. We need to make absolutely certain there are no track marks. No evidence of the drug habit you've been funding with stolen charity money. The accusation was so absurd that Claire actually laughed. Drug habit? Are you insane? I'm 7 months pregnant. And which is why, Margaret interjected smoothly, we need to check now, before the baby comes and you try to claim we're harassing a new mother. You want me to? Claire's voice trailed off as the understanding hit her like ice water. You want me to undress here? Just to your undergarments, Victoria said, as if this was perfectly reasonable. We simply need to verify there are no needle marks. Nothing that would suggest the accusations have merit. This is insane. I'm not doing this. Then you're admitting guilt. Celeste's voice hardened. And I'll have no choice but to call the police right now. Have you arrested in front of every important person in Boston? Claire's hands moved protectively over her belly. Her daughter kicked, as if sensing her mother's fear. Tyler won't let you do this. Tyler, Celeste said slowly, is my son. He'll do exactly what I tell him to do, just like he always has. The words hit harder than any physical blow, because Claire knew, with sick certainty, that they were true. Now, Celeste continued, you can make this easy, or we can make it very, very difficult. Your choice. Claire's hands trembled. They moved to the zipper at the back of her dress. Every cell in her body screamed at her to run, to fight, to do anything but comply. But Margaret blocked the door and Victoria's hand rested meaningfully on her phone. That's a good girl, Celeste murmured. The emerald fabric pooled at Claire's feet, leaving her in a white maternity slip. Her pregnant belly pressed against the thin fabric, vulnerable and exposed. That too, Patricia said. Please, Claire whispered. This is enough. You can see I don't have track marks. All of it. Celeste's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Claire's vision blurred with tears. Her fingers caught the hem of her slip, and something inside her shattered. Not her spirit, but something quieter. The part of her that still believed in human decency, that thought surely they wouldn't. Surely there was a line they wouldn't cross. There was no line. The slip fell away, leaving her in nothing but her bra and underwear, her swollen belly on full display. The overhead lights felt like searchlights, the mirrors reflecting her humiliation from every angle. Turn around, Margaret commanded. Claire rotated slowly, arms wrapped around herself, trying to preserve some shred of dignity, while four women who'd never known a day of the struggle examined her like livestock. Satisfied? Claire's voice cracked. Celeste walked a slow circle around her, phone in hand. The camera angle was subtle, but Claire saw it, saw the slight tilt as Celeste captured images. Not quite, Celeste said. We need to document this properly. For the lawyers, you understand. You're photographing me. Evidence, Victoria said simply. In case you try to claim we assaulted you, these photos prove you're cooperating voluntarily. Nothing about this was voluntary, but Claire understood the game now. They were building a narrative, creating documentation that would show her as willing, compliant, guilty. A sound from the corridor made Claire's heart leap. Footsteps. Help, she screamed. Someone help me. Patricia's hand clamped over Claire's mouth, hard enough to bruise. Shut up. The cameras are off in this corridor, Margaret said calmly. We made sure of that. No one can see what's happening. No one can hear you. But they were wrong. Hidden behind a rack of spare linens, partially obscured by the doorframe, stood Jenna Brooks, 22 years old, working her third catering shift for the Ashford Foundation, holding her phone at chest level with the record button glowing red. Jenna had come to retrieve extra napkins when she'd heard raised voices. She'd frozen, uncertain, until she'd heard Claire scream. Now she stood paralyzed, watching through her phone screen as four wealthy women committed what was clearly a crime. Every instinct told her to run, to delete the video and pretend she'd seen nothing. These were powerful people, the kind who could destroy the working-class girl's entire future with a single phone call. But the pregnant woman's face, twisted in fear and humiliation, looked exactly like Jenna's sister had looked 3 years ago. before the Ashford family's lawyers had buried Sarah's sexual harassment case under mountains of NDAs and settlement money that came with gag orders. Jenna kept filming. Inside the room, Celeste finally lowered her phone. "You can get dressed now. We've seen enough." Claire scrambled for her clothes, pulling the slip over her head with shaking hands. The zipper of her dress caught, and she yanked it so hard the fabric tore. "Such grace," Victoria murmured. "We'll be watching you," Celeste said as Claire finally got her dress back on. "Every transaction, every movement, every breath. And when we find proof of what you've really been doing with our money, because we both know those funds didn't disappear into thin air, you'll wish you'd simply left when we gave you the chance." "I didn't take anything." "Of course you didn't, dear." Celeste patted Claire's cheek with mock affection. "Now, you're going to walk back into that ballroom with a smile on your face. You're going to stand next to my son for photographs. And you're not going to say one word about this unfortunate incident. Because if you do, those photos we just took will find their way to every media outlet in Boston, along with a very different story about what happened here tonight." Margaret unlocked the door. "Oh, and Claire," Celeste called as Claire stumbled toward the corridor. "You might want to fix your makeup. You look like you've been crying." Claire made it 3 steps into the hallway before her knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall, breathing in ragged gasps, trying to remember how to exist in a body that had just been violated by eyes and cameras and cruelty. Jenna stepped from behind the linen rack. "Are you okay?" Claire's head snapped up. She saw the young woman in catering uniform, saw the phone still clutched in her hand, saw the screen that showed a paused video. Their eyes met. "Did you—" Claire started, hope and horror warring in her chest. "Did you record that?" "I did." Jenna's thumb hovered over the delete button. This was the moment. She could erase it, apologize for invading privacy, go back to her minimum wage job and forget this ever happened. Instead, she heard herself say, "Every second." Claire gripped Jenna's arm so hard her fingernails drew blood. "Please, please tell me you're not going to delete that." "I don't know." Jenna's voice shook. "Those women, they're the Ashfords. They own half of Boston. If they find out I filmed them, I'll never work in this city again. My sister already lost everything when she sued one of their companies. I can't go through that." "Your sister sued them." "Sexual harassment. 3 years ago. They buried her in legal fees and NDAs. She works at a gas station now because they blacklisted her from every decent job in New England." Tears streamed down Jenna's face. "I'm sorry. I can't be brave like she was. I can't lose everything." Claire understood. God, she understood. But that video was the only evidence that what had just happened was real. Without it, the Ashfords would twist the narrative, make her look insane or vengeful or both. "Copy it," Claire said suddenly. "Send it to yourself, to me, to 10 different email addresses. Hide it everywhere. Then you can delete it from your phone if you need to. But please, please don't let that be the only record." Jenna hesitated, then nodded. Her fingers flew across her phone screen, sending the video to her personal email, her cloud storage, her sister's account, Claire's phone number, which Claire whispered urgently. "Done," Jenna said. "But I'm deleting it from my phone now. I have to. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You saved my life tonight, even if you don't know it yet." Claire's phone buzzed in her evening bag. The video file appeared. 19 minutes of pure evidence. She downloaded it immediately, then forwarded it to 3 email addresses she'd set up in college that Tyler didn't know existed. "I need to go back in there," Claire said, more to herself than to Jenna. "If I run, they'll know something's wrong. They'll come looking. You're going back after what they just did." "I don't have a choice." Claire straightened her dress, wiped her smudged mascara, forced her breathing to steady. "Not yet. Anyway." She walked back into the ballroom on legs that barely held her weight. The party continued unchanged. Crystal clinked. Laughter echoed. Photographers captured Boston's elite in their finest moment. Tyler materialized at her elbow. "Where have you been?" "The photos are about to start." Claire looked at the man she'd married, really looked at him. At the weak jaw hidden under expensive grooming, the watery blue eyes that never quite met anyone's gaze, the soft hands that had never built anything or fought for anything or protected anything. "Your mother wanted to talk," Claire said. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, foreknowledge. She means well. She's just protective of the family. Is that what you call it? Claire, please. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just smile for the cameras. Make it through tonight. And tomorrow we can figure everything out. Tomorrow. As if tomorrow would somehow be different from today. Or last week. Or the past 7 months of gradual torture disguised as family initiation. The photographer positioned them near the foundation's banner. Tyler's arm around her waist felt like a shackle. Claire's smile felt like her face was cracking. Flash, flash, flash. Beautiful, the photographer called. Mrs. Ashford, could you turn slightly toward your husband perfect? And now one of the whole family? Celeste glided over, followed by Grant, Patricia, Margaret, and Victoria. They arranged themselves around Claire and Tyler like a perfectly choreographed prison, all gleaming teeth and dead eyes. Flash, flash, flash. Claire's vision grayed at the edges. The room tilted. She felt her daughter kick hard, as if trying to escape. And Claire didn't blame her. This was no world to be born into. I need air, Claire whispered. Not yet, Tyler said through his smile. 2 more shots. Tyler, I'm going to faint. You're fine, just breathe. But she wasn't fine. Everything was wrong. The contractions that had started during the humiliation in the dressing room were getting stronger, coming faster. This wasn't normal pregnancy discomfort. This was her body trying to tell her something was terribly, dangerously wrong. I need to leave. Now. Mrs. Ashford, the photographer called, adjusting his lens. Could you place your hand on your belly, like that? Beautiful. The American dream. Right here. The American nightmare, Claire thought as another contraction hit, stealing her breath. Finally, mercifully, the photographer finished. Claire broke away from Tyler's grip, stumbling toward the exit. She made it to the lobby before her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello, so Claire Donovan. A woman's voice. Crisp and professional. Yes. This is Amanda Pierce from the Boston Herald. I'm calling for comment on a story we're running tomorrow morning about your arrest for embezzlement and fraud. Would you like to make a statement? Claire's world tilted. My arrest, I haven't been arrested. Not yet, but I have sources at the DA's office confirming that warrants will be issued first thing tomorrow morning. Multiple felony charges related to the Ashford Foundation investigation. I'm giving you an opportunity to tell your side before we go to print. This was it. The kill shot. The Ashfords weren't just humiliating her. They were destroying her completely. Criminal charges meant she'd lose custody of her baby the moment she was born. Meant years in prison for crimes she didn't commit. Meant they'd won. I have no comment, Claire said numbly. So you're not denying the charges? I'm not denying or confirming anything. I need to speak with my lawyer. For the record, you don't currently have a lawyer on retainer. I checked, which seems unusual for someone who knew charges were coming. Because I didn't know. Because this is all fabricated. Because they're going to win. Claire ended the call. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped her phone. Another contraction hit. Harder than before. Something warm trickled down her leg, and when she looked down, she saw blood seeping through her dress. Time stopped. The baby. Something was wrong with the baby. Claire's phone slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering on marble. She looked up to see Tyler standing in the ballroom doorway, his face a mask of carefully constructed concern. Claire, he called, loud enough for others to hear. Sweetheart, are you okay? You look unwell. A crowd was gathering, cameras turning, phones rising. I need a hospital, Claire gasped. Of course. Someone call an ambulance. Tyler moved toward her, his hand on her elbow looking supportive to everyone watching. But his grip was iron, his voice a whisper. Mother has a car waiting. The family doctor is ready to see you. I need a real hospital. Dr. Patterson is a real doctor. He's been the Ashford family physician for 30 years. He'll take excellent care of you and keep things discreet. You don't want this to become another media circus, do you? The sirens were already approaching, but when the ambulance arrived, it wasn't marked with city logos. It was a private medical transport, unmarked and pristine. This isn't right, Claire tried to say, but another contraction cut off her words. The paramedics loaded her onto a gurney with professional efficiency. Tyler climbed in beside her, his face the picture of concerned husband. As the doors closed, Claire caught a glimpse of Jenna standing near the service entrance, phone in hand, filming everything. Then the ambulance pulled away, heading in the opposite direction of Boston General, heading towards something far worse than a hospital. The clinic looked more like a luxury spa than a medical facility. Soft lighting, cream-colored walls, abstract art that probably cost more than most people's houses. Claire's gurney rolled through corridors empty of other patients, other staff, other witnesses, just her, Tyler, and two paramedics who wouldn't meet her eyes. "Where are we?" Claire managed between contractions. "Patterson Wellness Center," Tyler said. "The best private care in New England." "I've never heard of it." "That's because it's exclusive, only for people who value discretion." They wheeled her into a private room with a stunning view of the harbor. Any other time, Claire might have found it beautiful. Now it just felt like a gilded cage. Dr. Patterson entered within minutes, a silver-haired man with the smooth manner of someone used to being obeyed without question. He examined Claire quickly, efficiently, while Tyler stood nearby scrolling through his phone. "The baby's heart rate is elevated," Dr. Patterson said, "and there's evidence of placental stress. We need to monitor you overnight." "What caused it?" Claire asked. The doctor's pause was infinitesimal, but telling. "Stress can trigger early labor symptoms. Have you been under unusual pressure lately?" Claire almost laughed. Unusual pressure, like being accused of felony theft, like being stripped and photographed by her in-laws, like having her entire life systematically destroyed. "You could say that. Well, rest is crucial now. I'm going to give you something to help you relax." "I don't want sedatives. I'm pregnant." "It's perfectly safe, I assure you. A mild anxiolytic that will help calm your system and potentially stop these contractions." The nurse appeared with a syringe before Claire could protest further. The medication entered her IV line, and within seconds, the world began to soften at the edges. "Wait," Claire tried to say. "I need to call someone." "You need to rest," Dr. Patterson said firmly. Tyler leaned over her on, brushing hair from her forehead in a gesture that might have looked loving to anyone watching. "I'll be right here, sweetheart. You just sleep." But his eyes were flat and cold, and Claire understood with crystalline clarity that she'd just been drugged and imprisoned, and no one was coming to save her. Her last conscious thought before the medication dragged her under was of the phone in her evening bag, and whether Tyler would find it before she woke up. She didn't know that 3 blocks away, Jenna Brooks was walking into a police station with her phone clutched like a weapon, demanding to speak to someone about a crime in progress. She didn't know that in Detroit, Warren Donovan's security team was already tracking his daughter's phone signal, watching it deviate from every hospital in Boston. She didn't know that Detective Sam Porter, one of the few honest cops left in a department compromised by Ashford money, was about to receive the case that would define his career. She just knew darkness, and the sensation of falling, and the terrible certainty that when she woke up, if she woke up, nothing would ever be the same. Warren Donovan's helicopter touched down on the helipad of Patterson Wellness Center at exactly 11:47 p.m. He exited before the rotor stopped spinning, flanked by 6 security personnel and 3 attorneys. The clinic administrator tried to block him at reception. "Sir, visiting hours are over and you're not on the approved list for this patient." Warren didn't slow down. "My daughter was brought here against her will. Either you open her room right now, or I buy this building and fire everyone in it before sunrise." "Mr. Donovan, I understand you are concerned, but Mrs. Ashford came here voluntarily with her husband." "Show me the admission forms she signed." The administrator's hesitation told Warren everything. She was sedated for her own safety, without consent, which makes this kidnapping. Warren turned to his lead attorney, Marcus Brennan. "File emergency custody papers. Get a judge on the phone. I want my daughter out of here in the next 10 minutes. "Mr. Donovan, if you'll just calm down." Warren's voice could have cut glass. "I built the network that broadcasts the news in this city. I own 3 newspapers, 2 television stations, and enough media influence to turn this clinic into tomorrow's headline scandal. Now take me to my daughter, or explain to your board of directors why you're being sued into bankruptcy for false imprisonment of a pregnant woman." The administrator paled. room 412. Warren took the stairs 3 at a time, his security team struggling to keep pace. He burst through Claire's door to find her unconscious, hooked to monitors, with Tyler Ashford sitting in a chair scrolling through his phone. Tyler looked up, startled. "Mr. Donovan, what are you doing here?" "Getting my daughter out of this trap you call a medical facility." Warren moved to Claire's bedside, checking the monitors. The IV drip. The restraints he noticed were loosely fitted around her wrists. Restraints on a pregnant woman. The doctor said she was agitated. They're just precautionary. They're illegal without proper documentation. Marcus appeared at Warren's shoulder. "I've already photographed them. This is going to destroy you in court." Tyler stood, trying to summon authority he'd never actually possessed. "You can't just barge in here and take her. She's my wife. She's my daughter. And unlike you, I actually give a damn whether she lives or dies." Warren was already removing the IV, disconnecting monitors, lifting Claire into his arms. She stirred slightly, murmuring something incoherent. "You're making a mistake," Tyler said, but he made no move to stop them. Because men like Tyler Ashford had spent their entire lives watching real power in action and recognizing when they were outmatched. Warren's helicopter lifted off at 12 minutes after landing. Claire woke slowly as they flew over Boston Harbor, city lights blurring below. "Dad." Her voice was thick with medication. "I've got you, sweetheart. You're safe now. The baby. We're heading to Boston General. Real doctors. Real care. Not Ashford puppets." Warren's jaw was granite. "What did they do to you tonight?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Everything. They destroyed everything. Then we'll destroy them back. But first, we make sure you and my granddaughter are healthy. The revenge comes after." At Boston General's emergency entrance, an entire obstetrics team was waiting. They rushed Claire into examination while Warren made phone calls that would reshape Boston's power structure before dawn. First call is head of security. "I want every detail of Claire's movements tonight. Video footage, witness statements, financial records, everything." Second call is media director. "Prepare a press release. My daughter was assaulted and falsely imprisoned. We're going public at 6 a.m. Third call, Detective Sam Porter, whose number Warren had obtained through channels he'd never disclose. "Detective, I'm sending you evidence of multiple felonies committed tonight against my daughter. I need you to be the kind of cop who actually gives a damn about justice." Porter's voice was gravelly from sleep. "Mr. Donovan, if you're trying to influence an investigation, I'm trying to report crimes that were filmed, documented, and witnessed. Are you interested or not?" A pause. "Send me what you have." Warren forwarded the video Jenna had uploaded to a cloud account, the one Claire had sent to her backup emails before collapsing. 19 minutes of 4 wealthy women committing assault, coercion, and false imprisonment. Porter's sharp intake of breath told Warren the detective was watching it in real time. "Jesus Christ. When was this?" 7 hours ago, at the Ashford Foundation Gala. My daughter is currently in the ER because whatever they did tonight triggered premature labor." Who else has seen this? Right now, just us, the woman who filmed it, and Claire. But at 6 a.m., I'm releasing it to every media outlet in America, unless you can give me one good reason not to. "Give me 24 hours, Porter said quickly. "Let me do this right. Get warrants, build a proper case. If you release it now, their lawyers will scream media circus and get everything thrown out on procedural grounds." Warren considered. 12 hours. And I want updates every 2 hours, or the video goes live. "Deal?" Warren ended the call as the obstetric doctor emerged from Claire's room. "Mr. Donovan, your daughter and granddaughter are stable. We've stopped the contractions, but she needs complete bed rest for at least a week. Whatever stress triggered this, it can't happen again." "It won't. She's staying with me now." "There's something else." The doctor's expression was grim. "The medications in her system, the ones administered at the private clinic, they're not standard anxiolytics. There were trace amounts of sedatives typically used in psychiatric facilities. Had she been left there much longer, the dosage could have been increased to levels that would have provided legal justification for involuntary commitment." The words hit Warren like a physical blow. They hadn't just been humiliating Claire. They'd been building a case to have her declared mentally incompetent, to take custody of her baby, to erase her completely. How long would that have taken? Another 6 to 8 hours of consistent dosing, combined with documentation of erratic behavior, would have been enough for a 72-hour psychiatric hold. After that, the doctor trailed off meaningfully. After that, Claire would have disappeared into the Massachusetts mental health system, where Ashford money and influence could keep her buried indefinitely. Warren's hands clenched. Can you document everything, every medication, every dosage, every deviation from standard care? Already done. I figured you might need it. Thank you, doctor. Warren entered Claire's room to find her awake, staring at the ceiling with hollow eyes. They were going to commit me, weren't they? That's what the clinic was for. Yes. And you stopped them. I'll always stop them. That's what fathers do. Warren sat beside her bed, taking her hand. I'm sorry I wasn't there before. Sorry I let pride keep me away when you needed me. You were right about Tyler. About all of them. Being right doesn't matter. Being there does. And from now on, I'm not going anywhere. Claire's phone, which Warren had retrieved from her evening bag, began buzzing with messages. Dozens of them. Screenshots of social media posts, news alerts, text messages from people she barely knew. Warren checked the screen and felt his blood turn to ice. The Boston Herald's website had just posted a breaking story. Pregnant wife of Ashford heir suffers mental breakdown at charity gala. Hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation. Below it, video clips that had been edited to show Claire screaming, being restrained, looking wild and unstable. All the footage from the ambulance, from the clinic, carefully cut to remove context and create a narrative of instability. The Ashfords had struck first. They're faster than I thought, Warren said quietly. What do we do? Claire's voice was small, broken. Warren's expression hardened into something that would have terrified anyone who'd ever negotiated against him. We hit back harder. He dialed Detective Porter. Change of plans. I'm releasing everything. Now. Mr. Donovan, wait. They just painted my daughter as insane across every media platform. We're past the point of playing by rules they've already broken. Are you with me or not? Porter's sigh carried the weight of a career spent watching rich people escape consequences. Send me everything you have. I'll start the warrant process. Warren hung up and turned to his media team. Release the video, unedited, uncensored, every platform we control. Simultaneously, add a statement my daughter was assaulted, falsely accused, and nearly imprisoned by the Ashford family. This is the truth they don't want you to see. Sir, we should run this past legal first. No, we do it now, or they bury her forever. At 5:33 a.m., as Boston began to wake, Warren Donovan's truth bomb detonated across the internet. The video of Claire's humiliation went viral within minutes. The photos of restraints at the clinic, the medical records showing psychiatric drugs administered without consent. By 6 a.m., hashtag Justice for Claire was trending nationally. By 7 a.m., 3 major advertisers had pulled funding from Ashford Foundation projects. By 8 a.m., Detective Porter had enough public pressure to walk into his captain's office and demand immediate warrants. By 9 a.m., Tyler Ashford's phone was ringing off the hook and with reporters demanding comment. And in a penthouse suite at Boston General, Claire Donovan watched the city that had tried to destroy her turn on her attackers with the swift, merciless judgment of the internet age. Is this what winning feels like? She asked her father. Warren smiled grimly. This is just the opening move. Sweetheart, wait until they see what comes next. Detective Sam Porter knocked on Claire's hospital room at exactly 10 a.m. He was 40 years old with graying hair and the perpetually exhausted look of a cop who'd seen too much corruption and not enough justice. Mrs. Ashford, I'm Detective Porter. I need to take your statement about the events of last night. It's Donovan, Claire said quietly. I'm going back to my maiden name. Porter pulled out his recorder. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Claire did. Every detail of the gala, the private room, the forced stripping, the photographs, the threats. Porter listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker. When she finished, he said, I'm going to be honest with you. The Ashfords have connections in the DA's office, the mayor's office, and about half the judges in Suffolk County. Building a case that actually sticks is going to be difficult. Then why are you here? Because I'm tired of watching rich people get away with crimes that would put normal folks in prison for decades. Porter leaned forward. But I need more than one video and your testimony. I need evidence of a pattern, financial crimes, witness intimidation, anything that builds toward RICO charges. RICO, that's organized crime. That's exactly what this is, an organization using intimidation, fraud, and conspiracy to achieve illegal goals. If we can prove pattern and coordination, we can bring down the whole family, not just the ones in that room. A soft knock interrupted them. A woman in her early 30s entered, wearing jeans and a blazer, with auburn hair pulled into a messy bun. She had Claire's nose and her father's sharp eyes. Bridget, Claire's voice cracked with emotion. What are you doing here? Dad called me. Bridget Hayes, Claire's cousin and an investigative journalist for the Boston Phoenix, crossed the room to hug her. I'm so sorry I didn't know what they were doing to you. You've been in Europe for 6 months, and clearly should have come home sooner. Bridget turned to Porter. Detective, I've been investigating the Ashford Foundation for a story about charity fraud in New England. I have 3 years of financial records that might interest you. Porter's eyebrows rose. How did you get those whistleblowers, mostly low-level accountants who got tired of cooking books for people who treated them like furniture? Bridget pulled out her laptop. There's at least $12 million that's been funneled through shell companies over the past 4 years. All of it authorized by Celeste and Grant Ashford. Show me. For the next hour, Bridget walked Porter through a labyrinth of financial fraud, fake vendors, inflated expenses, contracts awarded to companies that existed only on paper. All of it leading back to offshore accounts controlled by Ashford family members. This is good, Porter said finally. This is really good, but I need someone inside the organization to testify. Someone who can confirm these transactions were deliberate fraud, not accounting errors. I might know someone, Claire said slowly. Tyler's assistant, Sloan Mercer. She's been his executive assistant for 3 years. She'd have access to everything. Would she cooperate? I don't know, but I do know she seemed uncomfortable last night when she led me to that room by him. Like she knew something bad was about to happen, but couldn't stop it. Warren, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. I can find leverage. Everyone has something they care about, something they'll deal to protect. Legally, Porter warned. Of course, legally. Warren's smile was thin. I'm a legitimate businessman. Detective. I would never dream of doing anything improper. The tone suggested Warren had a very flexible definition of improper. But Porter decided not to push it. His phone rang. Porter. Yeah, are you serious when? He hung up, expression grim. Tyler Ashford just filed for an emergency restraining order against you. Claire, claiming you're dangerous and unstable. There's a hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. He what? It's a standard abuser tactic, Bridget said, fury coloring her voice. Flip the narrative. Make the victim look like the aggressor. Can they do that? Claire asked. After what they did, after that video went public. They can try, Porter said. And if they get a friendly judge, they might succeed. Which means you'd be prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Tyler or any Ashford property, including your own home. I don't want to go back to that penthouse anyway. It's not about the penthouse, Warren said quietly. It's about custody. If they establish you're dangerous, unstable, and under court order to stay away from Tyler, they can argue you're unfit to care for a child, especially one who happens to be an Ashford heir. The words hit Claire like ice water. They're going to try to take my baby. They're going to try, well, Warren agreed. We're going to stop them. Bridget was already typing furiously on her laptop. I'm calling in favors. Every journalist friend I have is going to be at that courthouse tomorrow. They want a media circus. We'll give them one they can't control. Porter stood. I need to go light a fire under the DA's office. If I can get warrants issued before that hearing, it changes the entire dynamic. An active criminal investigation makes Tyler's restraining order look like witness intimidation. After Porter left, Claire sagged back against her pillows. The adrenaline that had sustained her was fading, leaving only exhaustion and fear. I'm so tired. Dad, I just want this to be over. I know, sweetheart, but they're not going to stop until they are destroyed completely. People like the Ashfords. They don't understand compromise. They only understand total victory or total defeat. Then we'll have to defeat them. Warren smiled, proud despite the circumstances. That's my girl. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry, I didn't know they'd go that far. I have information that can help. Meet me, Sloan. Claire showed the message to Warren and Bridget. It's a trap, Warren said immediately. Maybe, Bridget countered. Or maybe she's genuine. Guilt can be a powerful motivator. If I meet her, it has to be public. Somewhere with cameras, witnesses, somewhere safe. The coffee shop in the hospital lobby, Bridget suggested. Maximum visibility. Claire texted back, hospital cafeteria. 1 hour. Bring everything you have. The response was immediate. I'll be there. 60 minutes later, Claire sat in the hospital cafeteria with Bridget beside her and Warren watching from a table nearby. Hospital security, privately hired by Warren, stood at strategic positions. Sloan Mercer arrived exactly on time. She looked different than she had at the gala, smaller somehow, without the armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup. She wore jeans and a sweater, and her eyes were red from crying. Thank you for meeting me, Sloan said, sitting down carefully. I wasn't sure you would. I'm not sure I should have, Claire said. You led me into that room. You knew what they were planning. I knew Celeste wanted to talk to you. I didn't know that they'd... Sloan's voice broke. I didn't know it would be that bad. But you suspected something. Yes, Sloan looked down at her hands. Celeste told me to make sure you came backstage. Said it was important family business. I should have questioned it. Should have warned you. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. I know. Sloan pulled a USB drive from her pocket. That's why I brought this. 3 years of emails, financial records, recordings of board meetings, everything you need to prove the Ashfords have been committing fraud, bribery, and witness intimidation for years. Bridget reached for the drive, but Claire stopped her. Why are you doing this? Sloan's eyes filled with tears. Because I just found out Celeste is my biological mother. The words hung in the air like a poem. What? Claire breathed. I found my adoption records last week. Celeste gave me up 27 years ago, right after high school, had me in secret, paid my birth to be erased from every record, then pretended I never existed. Sloan's laugh was bitter. She hired me 3 years ago without telling me. Just kept me close, controlled me, used me, and never once admitted who I really was. Does she know you found out? Not yet, but I left her a letter this morning. Told her I knew everything, and that I'd rather be a nobody than be her daughter. Well, Bridget's fingers closed around the USB drive. This is incredible. Thank you. Don't thank me. I should have done it years ago. I should have stopped her before she destroyed people like you. Sloan stood. There's something else you should know. Celeste is planning to have Tyler file paternity suit. They're going to claim the baby isn't his. Try to prove you were having an affair. Use it as evidence of your deception and fraud. That's insane. The baby is Tyler's. I know, but they've already found a witness who'll testify they saw you with another man. It's all fabricated, but it'll drag through courts for months. Long enough to establish doubt to paint you as a liar. Claire felt her world tilting again. When Buckeye, the paperwork is being filed this afternoon. You'll be served tomorrow, probably at the restraining order hearing. Maximum public humiliation. Warren appeared at Claire's elbow. Thank you, Miss Mercer. This information is invaluable. And there's one more thing. Sloan hesitated. Grant Ashford, Tyler's father, he's been bribing city officials for a waterfront development contract. If that comes out, it's federal corruption charges, the kind that bring down entire organizations. How do you know? I scheduled the meetings, made the payments, under fake vendor names. I have documentation of every single transaction. Bridget's eyes lit up. That's Rico. That's exactly what we need. After Sloan left, the three of them sat in silence, processing everything they'd just learned. She just handed us a nuclear weapon, Bridget said finally. And tomorrow, Warren added, we're going to detonate it right in the middle of their restraining order hearing. Claire looked between her father and cousin, these two people who dropped everything to fight beside her, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope, exactly, but something close. I want to do more than just defend myself, she said quietly. I want to destroy them. Completely. Warren smiled. Now you're thinking like a Donovan. The next morning, Suffolk County Courthouse resembled a media circus. Reporters lined the steps, cameras everywhere. Protesters holding signs that read, "Justice for Claire" and "Believe Women." Bridget's journalist friends had delivered, turning what should have been a routine hearing into a public referendum on power and abuse. Claire walked up those steps flanked by Warren and three attorneys, her head high despite the exhaustion dragging at her bones. She was still wearing maternity clothes, her baby visible proof of what the Ashfords were really fighting for. Tyler waited inside with his own legal team, looking pale and trapped. Celeste sat beside him, her expression carved from ice. Grant was noticeably absent. "All right," the bailiff called. The Honorable Judge Patricia Winters presiding. What Judge Winters was 60, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for being immune to both money and pressure. Warren had researched every judge in the county before accepting this hearing date. Pure luck had given them Winters. "Mr. Ashford," Judge Winters said without preamble, "you're requesting an emergency restraining order against your wife. On what grounds?" Tyler's attorney, a slick corporate lawyer named Edmund Price, stood baited. "Your Honor, Monsieur, Ashford has exhibited increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. She's made false accusations against my client's family. She's recruited media to harass them, and her mental state has deteriorated to the point where she represents a threat to herself and others." "I've seen the video circulating online," Judge Winters said dryly. "The one showing four women forcing Mrs. Ashford to undress. Are you claiming that video is fabricated?" Price didn't miss a beat. "We're claiming it's taken out of context, Your Honor. Mrs. Ashford volunteered to prove she had nothing to hide. What the video doesn't show is her aggressive behavior immediately before and after, behavior that necessitated medical intervention. Medical intervention at a private clinic owned by Ashford Business Associates, where she was administered psychiatric medications without informed consent." Price faltered. "That's not. The doctors followed proper procedures." "Did they?" "Because I have medical records from Boston General suggesting otherwise." Judge Winters looked over her reading glasses at Warren's lead attorney. "Mr. Brennan, I assume you have something to add." Marcus Brennan stood, projecting the calm authority of someone who'd argued before the Supreme Court. "Your Honor, this restraining order is nothing more than an attempt to intimidate a witness in an ongoing criminal investigation. Detective Samuel Porter of the Boston Police Department is currently pursuing charges against Celeste Ashford, Grant Ashford, and others for assault, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. We have documentation proving systematic harassment of my client designed to discredit her before she can testify." "That's absurd," Price sputtered. "There's no criminal investigation." The courtroom doors opened. Detective Porter walked in, holding a folder. "Actually," Porter said, "there is, as of 8 a.m. this morning, when the district attorney signed off on arrest warrants for multiple members of the Ashford family." The courtroom erupted. Judge Winters banged her gavel for order. "Detective Porter, approach." Porter handed the folder to Judge Winters. She read quickly, her expression darkening. "Mr. Price, did you know your client's mother and father were about to be arrested?" Price had gone pale. "Your Honor, No, I had no knowledge. Because this rather changes things. Your client is asking for a restraining order against the primary witness in a felony investigation. That looks a lot like witness intimidation." "Tyler didn't know," Celeste said suddenly, standing. Her voice carried the command of someone used to dominating every room. "My son knew nothing about any of this. He's innocent." "Mrs. Ashford, sit down," Judge Winters ordered. "I will not. You're allowing this media circus to influence your judgment. My family has donated millions to this city, supported countless charities, and allegedly embezzled millions more from those same charities." Judge Winters turned to Porter. "Detective, are you ready to make arrests?" "Yes, Your Honor. We have warrants for Southfalls for Celeste Ashford, Grant Ashford, and Patricia Hammond for assault, conspiracy, and false imprisonment. We also have warrants for Grant Ashford and 3 city officials for bribery and corruption related to the Harbor Point Development Project." Celeste's mask finally cracked. "You can't do this. We have rights. We have lawyers. And you'll have plenty of time to use them." Bailiff, take Mrs. Ashford into custody. What happened next would be replayed on news channels for weeks. Celeste Ashford, Boston's society queen, being handcuffed in open court while cameras captured every moment. Her screams of outrage, her threats, her complete loss of composure as the system she'd thought she owned turned against her. Tyler sat frozen, watching his mother being led away. Then he turned to Claire. "I'm sorry, Toy," he said quietly. And for the first time since she'd met him, he sounded genuine. "I should have protected you. I should have been stronger." "Yes," Claire said simply. "You should have." Judge Winters banged her gavel. "Mr. Ashford's petition for a restraining order is denied. Furthermore, given the ongoing criminal investigation, I'm issuing a temporary order prohibiting any member of the Ashford family from contacting Miss Donovan or interfering with her pregnancy or parenting decisions. This case is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy reached fever pitch. Claire stood at the microphone with Warren beside her, facing dozens of cameras. "I want to say something to every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet, to not make a scene, to accept abuse because the abuser had money, or power, or connections." Claire's voice was steady, strong. "Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And no one, no matter how wealthy or influential, has the right to humiliate you or harm you. What happened to me was wrong. What the Ashfords did was criminal. And I'm not going to stop until everyone involved faces consequences." The crowd erupted in applause. That night, as Claire watched the news coverage from Warren's estate, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. "It's not over," Warren reminded her. "The trial will take months. They'll fight every charge." "I know, but we're winning." "Yes," Warren agreed. "We are—" Claire's phone buzzed. A message from Jenna Brooks, the catering worker who'd filmed everything. "I just got a job offer from 3 different companies. All of them saw me on the news and said they wanted someone with integrity on their team. Thank you for making this matter." Claire smiled. This was what justice looked like. Not just punishment for the guilty, but vindication for everyone who'd been afraid to speak. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick. "Your grandmother would have loved you," Warren said softly. "Tell me about her." And for the first time in 5 years, Warren told his daughter stories about her mother, about love and loss and the strength that comes from surviving both. Outside, Boston sparkled in the twilight, a city learning that some stories don't end with the powerful staying powerful. Sometimes, the truth wins. 3 months later, federal prosecutors walked into court with a case so airtight that even the Ashfords' expensive legal team couldn't crack it. The trial of United States versus Ashford became the most watched legal proceeding in Boston history. Claire testified on day 3, 8 months pregnant now. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, her voice clear as she recounted every detail of that night at the gala. The defense tried to shake her, implied she'd been difficult or provocative, or had somehow invited the treatment she received. "So you're saying," Edmund Price asked with barely concealed contempt, "that 4 prominent women spontaneously decided to assault you for no reason whatsoever?" "No," Claire said calmly. "I'm saying they assaulted me because I threatened their family's reputation and they thought they could get away with it. I'm saying power makes people believe they're untouchable, and I'm saying they were wrong." The prosecution played Jenna's video in its entirety. 19 minutes of footage that left the courtroom in stunned silence. Several jurors were visibly crying. Sloan Mercer testified next, walking the jury through years of financial fraud, forged documents, and systematic corruption. She was nervous but unwavering, meeting Celeste's death glare across the courtroom without flinching. "Miss Mercer," the prosecutor asked gently, "why are you testifying against the woman who gave birth to you?" "Because she taught me that blood doesn't make you family. Character does, and I'd rather be alone than be part of that family." The defense tried to paint Sloan as a disgruntled employee, a liar seeking revenge. But Bridget's financial investigation backed up every claim. The paper trail was damning and complete. Grant Ashford had suffered a major heart attack 2 weeks into the trial. He survived, but was too medically fragile to attend proceedings. His testimony was given via video deposition, and watching him crumble under questioning was almost sad. Almost. Tyler took the stand on day 7. He looked like he'd aged a decade. his boyish features gone haggard. The prosecution treated him carefully, knowing he was the weak link, the one who might crack completely. Mr. Ashford, did you know your mother was planning to assault your wife? No? Did you know she'd arranged for psychiatric medications to be administered without consent? No. But you knew something was wrong that night. Your wife was bleeding, showing signs of distress, and yet you diverted her to a private clinic instead of a hospital. Why? Tyler's hands trembled. My mother said it would be better for the family. More discreet. I thought she meant avoiding paparazzi. Not, he trailed off, unable to finish. Not imprisoning your wife. I didn't know that's what was happening. I should have known, but I didn't. The jury didn't look sympathetic. Celeste Ashford testified last, and she was magnificent in her defiance. Dressed in Chanel, diamonds glittering even in the harsh courtroom lighting. She refused to show remorse or weakness. Mrs. Ashford, do you regret your actions? I regret that my family's privacy was violated. I regret that a vindictive woman was allowed to destroy decades of charitable work. I regret nothing about protecting my family's legacy. By assaulting a pregnant woman, by setting appropriate boundaries with someone who was clearly unstable and dangerous, even her own lawyer looked uncomfortable. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't complicated. Four wealthy women decided they were above the law. They assaulted Claire Donovan. They tried to have her committed. They used their money and influence to cover up crimes. And they would have gotten away with it, except for one brave young woman with a cell phone camera. The question isn't whether they're guilty. The evidence proves that beyond any doubt. The question is whether we're going to live in a country where wealth protects you from consequences, or whether justice actually means something. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Celeste Ashford, guilty on all counts, 18 years federal prison. Grant Ashford, guilty of bribery and corruption, 12 years federal prison. Patricia Hammond and the other accomplices, guilty, sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years. Tyler Ashford, guilty of perjury and accessory after the fact, 5 years. Though his lawyer immediately filed appeals, the Ashford Foundation was dissolved, assets liquidated, $200 million seized and redistributed to actual charities. Claire sat beside Warren as the verdicts were read, tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, but from relief so profound it hurt. It's over, she whispered. Yes, Warren said, it's over. The ballroom at the Harbor Point Club looked different now. Where Ashford Foundation banners had once hung, new ones declared the Rose Project protecting women, empowering survivors. Claire stood at the podium, her daughter Rose sleeping peacefully in a carrier on her chest. At 14 months, Rose had her mother's dark hair and her grandfather's sharp eyes. She was healthy, happy, and knew nothing of the nightmare that had preceded her birth. A year ago, Claire began, addressing the crowd of donors, survivors, and journalists. I stood in this building and experienced the worst night of my life. 4 women tried to destroy me because I threatened their power. They failed. Not because I was stronger than them, though I'd like to think I was. They failed because I wasn't alone. She gestured to the front row, where Warren sat beside Bridget, Jenna, Detective Porter, and Sloan, her found family. The people who'd stood beside her when blood relatives had tried to bury her. The Rose Project exists to make sure no woman faces what I faced alone. We provide legal support, financial assistance, and safe housing for women escaping abusive situations. We've helped 300 women in our first year, and we're just getting started. Applause filled the ballroom. I've been asked if I'm angry, if I hate the Ashfords for what they did. The truth is, I don't have energy for hate anymore. They're in prison where they belong. I have a daughter to raise, a foundation to run, and a life to live. That's the best revenge, building something meaningful from the ashes of their cruelty. After her speech, Claire mingled with donors and survivors. A young woman approached nervously, clutching a photograph. Mrs. Donovan, I'm Emma. I saw you on the news last year, and it gave me courage to leave my husband. The Rose Project helped me get an apartment and a restraining order. I just wanted to say thank you. Claire hugged her. You saved yourself. We just helped a little. It was more than a little. It was everything. Later, as the gala wound down, Warren found Claire on the balcony overlooking the harbor. Rose had woken up and was babbling happily, reaching for the lights reflecting on the water. "She's beautiful," Warren said, touching his granddaughter's tiny hand. "She is. And she'll grow up knowing that her mother fought for her, that her grandfather loved her, that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up." "Speaking of showing up," Warren said carefully, "Tyler wrote you a letter from prison. It's sitting on my desk. I wanted to ask if you want to read it." Claire considered. "What does it say?" "I don't know. I didn't read it. It's addressed to you." "No," Claire said finally. "I don't need his apologies or excuses. That chapter is closed." "Fair enough." Warren paused. "You know his appeals are being denied. He'll serve at least 3 years." "I know, and I know you had something to do with that." Warren's smile was slight. "I may have made certain the appellate judges had access to all relevant information. Just making sure justice isn't derailed by expensive lawyers." "Dad, what I'm just an interested citizen ensuring the system works properly." Claire laughed despite herself. "You're impossible. I'm effective. There's a difference." Warren's expression softened. "Your mother would be so proud of you, of the woman you've become, the strength you've shown. I wish she could have met Rose. She has, in every way that matters. That fierce little girl is carrying your mother's spirit." Rose grabbed Claire's necklace, tugging it with determined baby strength. Claire gently freed herself, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "I've been thinking about writing a book," Claire said, "about everything that happened, not for revenge or exposure, but to help other women recognize the signs of coercive control before it's too late." "That's a powerful idea. Will you use your real name?" "Yes, I'm done hiding. Done being ashamed of something that wasn't my fault." Bridget appeared at the balcony door. "Claire, there is someone here to see you. Says her name is Monica, and she drove 200 miles because her sister is in a situation and they need help." Claire looked at Warren, who smiled. "Go. That's why you built this." In the hallway, a frightened woman in her 40s waited, clutching a purse like a lifeline. Claire recognized that look, that particular combination of fear and desperate hope. Claire, tell me what's happening." And as Monica's story poured out, another variation on the same theme of power and abuse and women being told to stay quiet, Claire felt the purpose that had sustained her through the worst year of her life crystallize into something permanent. This was her life's work now, not just surviving, but creating spaces for others to survive, not just escaping, but building escape routes. Later that night, after Monica had been connected with lawyers and social workers in safe housing, after the last owner had left and Rose had been tucked into her crib, Claire stood in Warren's library, looking at the wall where he'd mounted the newspaper front page from the day of the verdict. Justice served Ashford, Empire Falls. Beside it, he'd framed the first photo ever taken of Claire and Rose together, in the hospital room 1 year ago. Claire looked exhausted in the photo, but her eyes were clear, determined, already planning how to turn trauma into purpose. "That's my favorite picture," Warren said from the doorway. "Why, Oscar?" "Because it's the moment you became who you were always meant to be. Not Tyler's wife, not my daughter, but Claire Donovan, survivor, fighter, builder of better worlds." Claire smiled, turning away from the past captured in newsprint. "What do you think happens next?" Next you change the world, one woman at a time." Next, Rose grows up with a mother who taught her that standing up to power is always right. Next, the Ashfords rot in prison while you thrive. Next, Warren paused, emotion roughening his voice. Next, you live the life they tried to steal from you. "I like that plan." "Good, because I've already started planning the Rose Project's expansion to New York and Chicago. We'll need bigger office space, more staff, probably another gala next year." "Dad, slow down." "No time to slow down. There are women out there who need us, and we're not going to rest until every single one of them knows they have somewhere safe to land." Claire laughed, the sound light and free. "You know you sound like an activist now, right? The tech billionaire turned social justice warrior. Your mother was an activist. It's in your blood. I'm just following where you lead." Through the window, Boston sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere in that city, Other women were experiencing their own nightmares, fighting their own battles. But now there was a lighthouse, a signal that help existed. The Rose Project, named for Claire's mother, built from Claire's pain, sustained by Warren's resources in Bridget's investigation, and Jenna's courage in Sloane's redemption, built from the ashes of everything the Ashfords had tried to destroy. You know what the best part is, Claire asked. What Celeste has to know from her prison cell, that her attempt to break me actually created something that will help thousands of women, that her cruelty built a legacy of justice. That's real revenge. Warren raised his glass of whiskey. To revenge served cold, and justice served hot. Claire clinked her water glass against it. To survival, to truth, to women who refuse to stay silent, and to daughters who are stronger than their fathers ever imagined. From the nursery down the hall, Rose's soft breathing filled the house with peace. This child, who'd been born from violence and protected by love, would grow up in a world slightly better than the one her mother had fought through. Not perfect, not fixed, but better. And that, Claire thought, was enough. That was everything.